Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Brill, and today we're going to get into this world of process mining. What's really at the core of ServiceNow, and that it's how do you deal with all of this data and find all these great solutions for it. And joining us today is Dan Grady. Dan, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Excited to have the conversation with you today.
Before we get deep into this world of process mining and data and how AI is going to come in and really work with all this and how we service our customers better, uh, give us a little bit of your background here at ServiceNow so we understand where we're going to go into this world of data.
Sure. So I've been here at ServiceNow for about 10 years now. The majority of that time has been spent working with customers in the analytics realm on the platform. The first 5 years was focused on helping customers get started with performance analytics, now platform analytics, the predictive intelligence stuff, some of the virtual agents. I spent a year working with customers on creating low code applications on the platform. And then for the last 5, I've been focused very much on helping customers with our process mining solution as we brought it to market.
Well, when you first told me about process mining, it was kind of like, oh, wow, that makes a lot of sense. I didn't realize that's what we're doing. And there's a lot of ins and outs to it. Explain this concept of process mining and where it really all begins here at ServiceNow.
Yeah, sure. So it's like process mining. Some people like to call it an X-ray for your business processes and your workflows. Others like to call it an MRI for it. Essentially, it's giving us visibility into the reality of how work is moving through the organization. So every organization is made up of thousands of different processes. And those processes are kind of like the lifeblood of what we do. They keep the organization moving forward. It helps every now and then to kind of get in there and kind of understand, are they working as you designed? Are they not working as you designed? Where are the inefficiencies? How can we get more out of the organization from a productivity and an efficiency standpoint? And process mining is that things that gives us that visibility.
That's where the dashboard comes in, our the ServiceNow kind of the brain center where we see all these graphs and numbers and things and we can pick all this. How do we interpret that? Or is that the right way to think about it?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, the traditional way that people look at dashboards is very much categorical information, right? Like it starts grouping the amount of work that we're doing. How many tickets, incidents, cases to do, which types were they? How long did it take to close those things? And then, you've got your KPIs that help you kind of track how well you're doing or trending towards the different targets or thresholds that you've been set. What process mining helps us do is kind of maybe go a little bit further than what those traditional dashboards tell us. Because those traditional dashboards, when people see them, they usually have follow up questions. And the answers to those follow up questions don't live in those dashboards, they live in process mining. So, for example, you might see that you have a closure time trend or your incidents are trending in the wrong direction in terms of how fast it's taking us to close them. Well, if you want to understand kind of where you're leaking air from your tires and what levers you could be pulling to kind of get those trends back moving in the right direction, process mining is where you start asking and answering those types of questions.
That clears it up a little bit because I understand when you look at the dashboard, and I've seen it, not everybody may get a chance to see the dashboard, but when you have all of this data, you're like, well, now what can I do with it? How do I interpret it? How do I make the data work for me? And I know that's a lot of that's almost like some secret sauce magic making almost. And I know that makes it sound so silly, but there is some of this idea of going from raw data to, is it insights is the right way to think of it?
Absolutely. And then ultimately the insights, you want to be able to turn them into actions. So the way that to think about process mining data, right, is we're moving from kind of the summarized stuff to looking at the different steps within a process and being able to isolate those steps and the time it's taking to move between those different steps. So while your higher level views of data typically show you, hey, it took us this long to close a case. Well, what makes up that time? Well, it sat in the news state for 4 days and it was idle before somebody picked it up. And then once they picked it up, they worked on it for 2 days. And then it kind of went into an on hold or a waiting approval state for this long amount of time. So having visibility into that level of granularity helps us understand where we can actually start to kind of tweak the process a little bit, educate people a little bit better, add an automation here, maybe even remove a step. Like I'll give you one example. One of my favorite stories is we found that with one customer, they had 2 levels of approval on printer toner requests. And that second level of approval was adding 2 days to the closure time. Like, do they really need two levels of approval on printer toner? And they thought not, and removed that step of the process, and it now is magically running 2 days faster. So people are getting their printer toner a lot faster so they can print out more stuff.
That's one of those simple explanations that really showcases process mining and really that flow. Because when you showed me how a flow works and all of the pills and the arrows and the connecting of everything, you're like, "Oh, wow, this is really showing me where something is going, who's involved, what the touch points are." Like you said, where the air is leaking out of the tire. When you can actually see all this information, it's almost orchestral in a way where you're like, "Well, if I move this here, I change this here," 2 days is a lot of savings in any kind of process, and I'm assuming if you're finding more, then, you're the hero of the organization at that point.
And the crazy thing about that is that's maybe 2 days per. One of the things that's interesting about process mining when we first start working with customers is we have this concept of I think you've seen it. So like it sometimes the process maps when you start looking at all the different routes that work is taking, it looks like a big bowl of spaghetti, and people think, I don't even know where to start with that big bowl of spaghetti. And there's this concept of what we call improvement opportunities as part of the solution, and what those do is they almost act as a menu of what spaghetti might be the most appetizing for you. So it'll analyze all of the different routes and ways that work is moving through, and it'll start calling out things like rework, where things are going A, B, C, back to A in the process, or things that are ping pong between different groups in the organization, or slow transitions in the process. Let's say 85% of your work takes longer than or less than 2 hours to go from a new to in progress state, but 2% takes longer than 8 days. It'll start to surface all of these things in a nice, easily consumable list. So it's almost like, hey, here's the menu of all your inefficiencies or potential opportunities to improve. And then what it does is it kind of summarizes or adds up all the time in that inefficiency. So, hey, you've got 72% of your tickets go into the state of awaiting call or info at some point in their life cycle. And there's 47 years worth of time packaged up in things going in and out of that awaiting call or state of the process. And like that number of 47 years sometimes is like a shock and awe moment for a lot of customers. They see these numbers and they're like, that can't be right. And it's because they've been conditioned for so long to just look at the averages. Oh, our mean time to resolve or our average closure time is 6 days. But if you were to add up that 6 days over 3,000 incidents, it adds up to 47 years. So that 2 days that we just talked about waiting for approval, and by removing that one step, it's not just 2 days, it's 2 days times 1,000 requests a month for that. And it adds up to maybe 7 years a month of time that you could be reclaiming for your organization just by removing that unnecessary approval in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I remember when you explained that to me, this 47 years, it's like, that's again, you said nobody believes it until they see it, and it's like, well, no, it does make sense when you have so many people or so many processes involved that it can kinda get away from everybody rather quickly. Um, when we have all this data, though, and we want to start removing the inefficiencies or providing better solutions, what are some ways of thinking about that, from a viewing the information standpoint?
I think one of the most popular ones these days is, and I'm going to maybe layer it twice here. Um, is everybody kind of wants to look for automation opportunities. And the idea with how process mining helps there, again, using the steps of the process and the time between those steps to help us find opportunities, is we can look for all the work that's taking, let's say, longer than 2 minutes, but less than 15 or 30 to move from an in progress to a resolved state or a closed state. And kind of you say, wow, well, why would you do that? Well, if something takes less than 2 minutes to go from in progress to closed, you've probably already automated that. No need to worry about it. If something takes longer than 2 minutes and less than 15 or 30, you probably haven't automated it yet, but a human's not doing a heck of a lot there. So there's got to be some self-service, some automation, some integration opportunities, some maybe just some knowledge articles we create in that subset of the work. Right. And that's a great place to start looking for those opportunities to automate. And once something becomes automated, then obviously there's different things on the platform that actually help us solve for those different things. Like, hey, you know what? Your swivel chairing, your agents are going from SAP to Oracle, but guess what? We have spokes with Integration Hub that will probably automate away that swivel chairing for the user and make their lives a little bit easier. So that's kind of one of the more common ways I think we see people starting to kind of pick off these opportunities to improve and then use the rest of the platform to make those improvements to the process.
You explained a great thing where people are like, "I didn't know, and now alls I have to do is pull something down and switch a radio button and go, now, oh, wow, I've just everybody's happy now. Everything is great." I'm sure though sometimes all this data is, maybe too much power or too much insight. What are some or what is some advice you can give people when it comes to looking at all this data to really maybe some best practices or to keep focused on all of this information have.
Yeah. Well, so I think the first one is to use those improvement opportunities that we provide out of the box to kind of start your journey. Don't kind of go immediately to the big bowl of spaghetti. Make sure you're using the menu to pick the spaghetti that's most appetizing for you, or the ones that kind of that 47 years. What is the biggest potential opportunity to dig into with the data? That's the first thing. The second thing is don't go into this expecting to find $1 billion worth of savings just by turning this solution on. I always like to describe it to people as, look, if you've got a flat tire, you have a flat tire. What process mining is great at is showing you all the different leaks that you have in your tires and the size of those leaks so you know which ones to prioritize plugging first. Right? It's going to show you there's going to be no shortage of opportunities to improve when you start looking at the data this way. You're not going to be able to act on them all at once. You need to have a way to kind of start to capture and track and prioritize these things. The data we provide helps you do that. And then there's other applications on the platform like continual improvement management and automation center that are designed to help us kind of hold on to these opportunities, make sure that we're tracking them and holding people accountable to following up on them. That's I think that's one of the best pieces of advice that I could give to a customer is make sure that you have a plan going in for how you're going to manage the work coming out of this because you're going to see lots of stuff. It is a super addicting solution. You get in there and you start seeing your data in ways and you'll process data in ways that you have not seen it before. And you're going to start seeing this, and this. Don't lose that stuff. They're all opportunities to get bigger. You need to make sure that you have a plan for how you're actually going to take action on these insights once you start finding them.
Right, yeah, it must be, almost a Herculean feat and, like, it's time for me to be the hero, and I've got all these great things I can do, but if I'm somebody who's now using the platform, what are some first steps that I should do as a user to really start going, "Okay, I wanna get into process mining, and I wanna do this right." What are some things I should do?
So the first thing to be aware of is if you're at the Xanadu level of ServiceNow, your platform's there. We've started to turn process mining on in a little controlled manner for you, just to get a taste, to dip your foot in there. So if you went to your process mining workspace, you'd see an evaluation project for incident at Xanadu. And then if you go to Yokohama, there's an evaluation project for HR case and customer service case. It allows you to mine the last 7 days of closed work up to 3,600 records. So it's a great way for you to see what process mining could do for you with your data. So start there. And if you go to the community site, we have articles and recordings that show you how to do some very common use cases with these evaluation projects. One of the more common ones that people love to get started with is what I like to call the finger pointing report. But essentially, it allows you to look at how work is moving, not just from state to state, but from group to group in the organization. Like every organization has issues with routing work from one team to another and getting things to the right place. Process mining is a great way to get visibility into the situations where you have multi-hop situations and find ways to start streamlining it. So that's one of those use cases that you could use the evaluation projects for and the videos we've given you. And that automation use case that I just shared, the 2 to 15 minutes, you could also do that with the evaluation projects. So it's a great place to kind of get started, get hands-on with the solution with your own data. There's also ServiceNow University courses that allow you to get hands-on and create your first project that spins up lab environments for you. That's another great place. Then I think as part of this, we'll be able to share some follow-up links or put some links in the there's a great article out there called The Guide to Getting Started with Process Mining that walks you through almost like a little curriculum.
Well, great. I mean, now we can figure out what we want to do. But give me an example because I know for a lot of people who use ServiceNow, if you're just coming in, especially if you're going through ServiceNow University or just starting out with the platform, there's a lot there, and you don't really know where to start. It's beyond the I spilled coffee on my laptop example, but what is a good, use case to get people's minds thinking about how they can use this?
Yeah, so we've talked about a few already, right? That finding automation opportunities and that multi-hop, or what I like to call the finger pointing scenarios. Uh, I'll give you a couple of recent examples that I think hit home. One of the more common ones that people use process mining for is to start to dig into service catalog and all the different requests they have running through the platform. And if you think about any service catalog request, there's usually two primary bottlenecks: the approval step of the process and then the fulfillment tasks themselves. Well, the reporting on the platform will allow you to see kind of the overall fulfillment time. But if you really want to like dig in and understand where those leaks are, you're going to want to use process mining. It allows us to separate out the approval step and the fulfillment tasks themselves. And with one recent customer, like one thing that we always like to check is show me all the approvals taking longer than 2 days. And for this specific customer, we found that they had 727 of the specific item in a given month that met that criteria, adding up to 7 years worth of time, 7 years worth of time waiting for approval. The fulfillment tasks tied to those 727, 7 days to go from open to close. So 7 years of time waiting for approval for 7 days of actual work. And the real kicker was it was being approved 97% of the time. They no longer have that approval in place and they're starting to reclaim. So that's one very common example. Most organizations have approval bottlenecks. This is a great way to kind of look at kind of the how much time you're losing waiting for approval versus the actual work time. So that's one example. I had another example where it was a large bank. Um, and we had turned process mining on. I went away for a week. I came back and he's, damn, this is amazing. And I said, "Oh, can you share some of your stories?" And he said, "Well, I actually we have this process where just to add somebody to an Active Directory group, it's completely automated. But when the automation fails, it generates a manual task for somebody to follow up and put the person in the Active Directory group." And he's like, "What I found is that it was failing about 2,200 times a month using process mining. And each one of those times it failed, the manual task was about 25 and a half hours. Again, 7 years seems to be a magic number, but if you add that up, it comes out to 7 years." And he said, when I looked into it, all I had to do to fix the problem was adjust the form to not allow somebody to put somebody in a domain, in a group in a domain that where they weren't in. It was just a change to the form. So I made that change and now it's going to save them 7 years a month. And he said, "Dan, it was almost a double in efficiency though, because people were calling the service desk to check the status of those manual cases that were being created. So just by changing the form, I kind of solved the double inefficiency in the organization." And he saw the initial use case of the problem through process mining. And then maybe I'll give you one more. And this is one of my favorite ones. Those two are top of the list. But I like this last one because some people say, "Dan, if I turn on and I use process mining, like once I fix my process, like why would I ever need to use it again?"
Great question. Great question. Yeah.
It's a very short-sighted way to look at it, and I have some flippant answers, which I won't use here. I'll give you my analogy for it, and then I'll give you the customer example. Like, I always like to compare process mining to a metal detector, and, like, every organization is like a beach of inefficiencies, and you got that crazy dude walking around with a metal detector every morning, right? And it's gonna beep louder in some places and softer in others, and where it beeped louder, that's like the 47 years you dig. And sometimes you find a diamond ring, sometimes you find an aluminum can. But it's way better to be doing that, looking for those inefficiencies or those opportunities with the metal detector than not having the metal detector. And then, like, why does that crazy dude show up every day? Oh, one, because he's crazy, but two, because the waves are constantly rolling new stuff up onto the shore. And our organizations are the same way. We're dealing with constant macro changes in the economy or in our industries. We're hiring new people. We're rolling out new software. Like, our organizations are in a constant state of flux. We're going to want to constantly be looking at the reality of our processes to see if there's opportunities for them to get better. And one example of this is I had a customer, they rolled out a new piece of software recently, and they were using process mining to look for something else. But what they found is that 70% of the new tickets related to this new piece of software were being routed to the wrong team, and each time it got routed to the wrong team, it added one additional hour to the closure time for that. And all they had to do to solve the problem was change the knowledge article or update the knowledge article that the level one team was using to triage these problems. So it's just one of those things, like an example of like, hey, something new happened to the organization, new piece of software, and we saw an opportunity to get better right away with process mining. And it kind of ties back to the one last point that I think I'll make is that the advantage you have of process mining in the ServiceNow platform is the direct access to this data that you mentioned at the very beginning, kind of coming full circle here. Right? Process mining is a data driven solution. There's so much data flowing through the platform. Having immediate visibility to it in this way is a huge advantage. Traditional approaches to process mining force you to extract data into a third party solution, and then you can start visualizing things. That extraction and transformation and preparation of the data very often takes weeks, if not months. It's a lot of time to be wasting or losing in terms of fixing a problem like this 1 hour per ticket that they were able to see almost immediately because they already had access to the data. Because we're there on the platform, we can see this stuff in hours, if not minutes, not weeks or months, as you would with a traditional approach to process mining.
So this means I'm a wizard now if I'm using process mining. Just to, give everybody a takeaway when we're done, right? I'm just a wizard of everything.
I mean, look, it's you know a lot more than what you used to know. Is the way to kind of to think about it is, and that's the progression, right? I think we may have talked about this in the past, but the progression is you have several different flavors of analytics and ways to use data that's flowing through the platform. Right. You've got the operational reporting, which is great is telling you about like where you are right now. Right. Like, hey, you've got 200 open incidents right now, which is an important piece of information for so many use cases. But it's not the only piece of information that you need because if I came and said, hey, is that 200 incidents that are open right now, is that a good or a bad thing? And without knowing where you were before, you wouldn't have all the data you need to answer that question, right? What platform analytics brings is the ability to snapshot data over time. So you can not only answer where we are right now, but where we were before and get that trend based view so you get an understanding of whether we're getting better or not. Right. Everything we're doing on ServiceNow is designed to help us improve the way in which work gets done. Platform analytics gives the infrastructure and the engine that we need to actually communicate that that's happening. And then we layer in process mining after because not only do you want to know how you're performing and how you're trending towards your goals, your targets, you also want visibility into what levers you could be pulling in the organization to actually make those improvements faster or kind of get to the goals in a much more effective or efficient manner. And that's where process mining comes in. It gives us that visibility into the mat or the visibility into kind of where we should be making changes and adjustments on a regular basis to help us reach our goals more effectively.
Well, I mean, that's fascinating. I'm so excited that you have these tools where we can go and just start to play with it and experience it. And all of those links we're going to put into the show notes so that anybody can go in and just start trying out process mining and trying to figure out how you can save time and discover these inefficiencies and really make your organization sing. Dan, a pleasure having you on.
Happy to be here. This has been awesome. Love it. Hope we can do it again sometime.
Thank you again, everyone. I'm Bobby Brill, your host. And if you have any questions, please head over to servicenow.com and check out the show notes for all the links about process mining. Thanks for listening, everyone.